Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're taking a deep dive into something that's been generating a lot of buzz lately, the environmental impact of Bitcoin mining.
Yeah, it's a pretty hot topic.
It really is,
Yeah.
especially for those of us who are interested in crypto, but also, care about the planet.
Absolutely.
So we're going to try to unpack all of that today.
That sounds good.
So you've probably heard that Bitcoin uses a ton of energy, but is it really as bad as some people say? And what's being done about it?
Yeah, those are some big
Yeah,
questions.
that's exactly what we're going to be diving into today.
All right, I'm ready to dive in.
Great. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of the solutions, let's just make sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah, good idea.
Can you give us a super quick breakdown of what Bitcoin mining actually is and why does it need so much energy?
Okay, so Bitcoin mining is essentially the process that keeps the entire Bitcoin network secure and running smoothly.
Okay.
And as you know, Bitcoin is a decentralized digital currency, so there's no central bank or government controlling it. Instead, it relies on a massive network of computers all over the world
Right.
to verify transactions and add them to this public record called the blockchain.
So it's kind of like a giant digital bookkeeping system.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
Okay, cool.
And these miners, they're like the bookkeepers, right? They're constantly competing to solve these super complex math problems.
Oh, I see.
And whoever solves it first gets to add the new block of transactions to the blockchain, and they get rewarded with Bitcoin.
Oh, so that's the incentive.
Right,
No,
exactly. But here's the catch. Those math problems are so complex that they require a ton of computing power. And we're talking warehouses full of specialized computers running 24/7.
Wow, so that's where all the energy use comes in.
Yeah,
All
exactly.
those computers need a lot of juice.
They need a ton of electricity.
And we know energy use has a direct impact on the environment.
For
So
sure.
how much energy are we actually talking about here? Is it really as bad as some people make it out to be?
Well, the numbers can be pretty alarming. Globally, Bitcoin mining consumes a massive amount of electricity, more than many entire countries,
Right.
like think Argentina or the Netherlands.
Wow, that's a lot.
It's a huge amount of power,
Yeah.
and a big chunk of it, unfortunately, still comes from non-renewable sources like coal.
And that's, not good for the environment.
Not good at all. Burning coal releases a lot of those harmful greenhouse gases that contribute to climate change.
Right. So we can't ignore that aspect of it.
Definitely not.
But okay, let me ask you this. For someone who's not super into crypto,
Mm-hmm.
why should they care about Bitcoin's energy consumption? How does this impact them directly?
It's a great question, and I think it boils down to this idea of shared responsibility for the planet.
Right.
When we talk about greenhouse gas emissions, we're really talking about the air we breathe and the future of our planet.
Hmm.
And climate change, which is fueled by those emissions, affects everyone everywhere, from rising sea levels to those extreme weather events that we're seeing more and more of.
Yeah, no, that's true.
It's a global issue.
So even if you don't own a single Bitcoin, the way it's mined can still have a real impact on your life.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've laid out the problem. Bitcoin mining uses a lot of energy. A lot of that energy comes from sources that are contributing to climate change.
Right.
But I have a feeling there's more to the story
Oh, absolutely.
because we wouldn't be doing a deep dive on this if it was all doom and gloom.
Yeah, there's some good news too.
What's the other side of this? What are Bitcoin miners doing to actually address this?
Well, the good news is that the Bitcoin community is becoming a lot more aware of this environmental impact.
Okay.
And a lot of miners are actively looking for solutions. And there are some really encouraging trends emerging.
Okay, that's good to hear.
And that's what we'll be exploring next.
All right, I am very intrigued. Stay tuned as we dive into how Bitcoin miners are working to lessen their environmental impact.
It's going to be good.
There's some really innovative stuff happening.
For sure.
You won't want to miss it.
Yeah, definitely not. One of the biggest trends we're seeing is a shift toward renewable energy sources for Bitcoin mining.
Yeah, I've been hearing about that too.
Yeah, it's a really positive development.
And it seems like miners are realizing that going green is not just good for the planet.
Right.
It could actually be good for business.
Exactly. It makes a lot of sense economically.
Yeah.
Renewable energy sources like solar, wind, hydro, even geothermal, they're becoming more and more cost competitive with fossil fuels.
Yeah.
And that's a big incentive for an industry that relies so heavily on electricity, right?
Yeah.
Their profit margins are directly tied to their energy costs.
Right.
So finding cheaper and more sustainable energy sources, it's a win-win for them.
It's not just about saving money, though, is it?
Oh,
I think there's also this growing awareness of their image. Like consumers are getting more environmentally conscious.
oh, absolutely.
I think Bitcoin miners are starting to realize that they need to show that they're taking this seriously.
Yeah, public perception is really important. Consumers, especially those who are interested in crypto, they're demanding more sustainable practices.
Yeah.
And miners who can prove that they're committed to sustainability,
Okay.
they definitely have an edge in today's market.
Yeah, it's a smart business move, too.
It is.
So can you give us some specific examples of how this shift to renewables is actually happening? Like, what are some things that are, going on right now in the real world?
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of activity in countries that have a lot of renewable resources.
Right.
Iceland, for example, has become a hotspot for Bitcoin mining
Really?
because of its abundant geothermal energy.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, and Norway, with its huge hydroelectric power, that's another attractive location.
So they're really using like the Earth's natural power
Exactly.
to fuel this digital revolution.
That's a good way to put it.
Kind of poetic in a way.
I know, it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
It's not just happening overseas, though, right here in the U.S. We're seeing mining operations popping up near solar and wind farms, using that excess energy
Oh, that's interesting.
that might otherwise go to waste.
So they're actually helping to make renewable energy more efficient by using up that surplus.
Exactly.
Ah.
It's a win-win situation.
That's really cool.
And the numbers really back this up. Reports suggest over 50% of Bitcoin mining now relies on renewable energy.
Wow, that's incredible.
And that number's only going up.
Okay, so it sounds like the industry is really making some strides in the right direction.
Yeah, they're definitely moving in a positive direction.
But I'm curious, is it just about switching energy sources, or are there other innovations happening that are making Bitcoin mining more efficient in general?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Okay.
There's actually a ton of focus right now on finding ways to make the mining process itself more energy efficient. It's not just about where the energy comes from, but how it's being used.
Okay.
How can we optimize those mining operations?
Yeah. Now, this is where it gets really interesting for me.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit more about these innovations.
Okay.
What are some of the coolest things that you've come across?
So one area where we're seeing a lot of progress is the development of more energy efficient mining hardware. It's kind of like upgrading from an old gas guzzling car to like a sleek electric vehicle.
So they're basically designing computers that can do the same amount of work with way less power.
That's exactly it.
Okay, impressive.
These new generation mining rigs, they're designed to maximize that computing output
Okay,
while minimizing the energy consumption.
cool.
It's about squeezing more performance out of every watt.
Okay, that's really cool.
It's really impressive the advancements they're making.
But when I think about Bitcoin mining, I still picture these massive warehouses packed with computers just generating tons of heat.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Is there anything being done to address that?
Yeah, heat management's a big challenge,
Yeah.
but there are some really clever solutions emerging.
Okay, like what?
One fascinating example is reusing that waste heat.
Oh.
Instead of just venting it out into the atmosphere, some facilities are capturing it
Oh,
and using it to warm buildings, greenhouses, even swimming pools.
wow. That's thinking outside the box.
It is. It's pretty innovative.
Turning a problem into an opportunity.
Exactly.
What other cool innovations have you seen?
Another trend that's gaining some traction is something called demand response programs.
Demand response.
Yeah, it involves collaboration between Bitcoin miners and power grids.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Basically, miners agree to adjust their energy usage based on the needs of the power grid.
Okay.
For example, like during times of peak demand when everyone's cranking up their AC, miners can temporarily reduce their operations to free up power for the grid.
Oh, so they're kind of acting like a buffer.
Yeah, exactly, to stabilize the grid.
Okay.
And in return for being flexible, they might get discounts on electricity during off-peak hours.
There's a win-win for everyone.
Exactly, it's mutually beneficial.
That's a really smart system.
Yeah, it's a really interesting development.
So it sounds like these innovations are really targeting those environmental concerns head on.
They are.
Are there any other emerging trends that we should know about?
Yeah, there are a couple more we should definitely discuss.
Okay, so we've talked about switching to renewables and some of those cool energy efficiency innovations, but there are a couple other things I wanted to touch on.
Okay. Yeah, what else is on your mind?
What about carbon offsetting and government regulations?
Yeah, those are both playing a big role too
Okay.
in shaping the future of Bitcoin mining.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with carbon offsetting.
Okay.
It's essentially a way for companies or individuals to invest in projects that reduce emissions elsewhere to kind of compensate for their own carbon footprint.
So it's kind of like planting trees to make up for,
Yeah.
the emissions you're creating.
That's a good analogy context of Bitcoin mining. We're seeing miners invest in things like reforestation projects,
Oh.
renewable energy development, or even technologies that can capture carbon directly from the atmosphere.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
But, like, does that really solve the problem at the source?
right.
Some people argue that it's just a way for companies to kind of avoid actually reducing their own emissions.
Yeah, that's a valid concern,
Mhm.
for sure. It's important to make sure that those offsetting projects are legit
Yeah.
and that they're actually making a difference. The effectiveness of carbon offsetting really depends on the quality of those projects.
Hmm.
It's crucial to make sure that they're truly additional, meaning they wouldn't have happened without that investment,
Okay.
and that the emissions reductions are real, measurable.
So it's not like a perfect solution,
Right.
but it can be a step in the right direction if it's done responsibly.
Exactly. It's not a
Yeah.
magic bullet or anything, but it can be a part of a larger strategy for achieving, carbon neutrality.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, what about government regulation?
Mm-hmm.
What role is that playing in all of this?
Well, we're seeing governments around the world
Okay.
taking a more active role in addressing this impact.
Okay.
Some countries are introducing policies to encourage the use of renewable energy, while others are imposing stricter regulations or even outright bans in some cases.
Yeah, I remember reading about China's crackdown on Bitcoin mining a few years ago. Pretty big deal.
It was huge.
Yeah.
China used to be the global hub for Bitcoin mining.
Wow.
But concerns about energy consumption and the environmental impact led to a nationwide ban.
Oh, wow.
And this forced a lot of miners to relocate to other countries, often those with more favorable regulatory environment and access to renewable energy. So in a way, that ban kind of helped accelerate this shift towards greener mining.
It's kind of an unintended consequence, but
Right.
a positive one in this case.
Exactly.
And it seems like other governments are kind of paying attention now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They're watching closely.
Mm-hmm.
Some are now offering incentives to attract miners who can demonstrate that commitment to sustainability.
Okay.
They want to position themselves as leaders in this growing industry.
It's fascinating how Bitcoin is kind of indirectly shaping the whole energy landscape,
It really,
creating this like ripple effect across the globe.
it's pretty amazing to see.
Yeah.
And here's another interesting twist.
Okay.
Bitcoin mining can actually be a driving force behind renewable energy development,
Really?
especially in more remote areas.
I did not see that coming. Tell me more about that.
Well, think about it. Bitcoin miners, they need a lot of cheap electricity,
Right.
and they're willing to go wherever they can find it.
Okay.
This creates a huge demand for new energy sources,
Right.
and renewable energy often fits the bill perfectly.
Okay.
It's often abundant in those remote areas where traditional energy sources might be limited.
So they're actually incentivizing the development of these projects
Yeah,
that might not have been financially viable otherwise.
exactly.
So it might seem counterintuitive.
It does.
But Bitcoin mining could actually help to bring renewable energy
Yeah,
to parts of the world that desperately need it.
it's a really interesting dynamic.
That is a really compelling argument, but let's be realistic.
Sure.
There are still a lot of critics out there
Of course.
who aren't convinced.
Yeah, and it's important to acknowledge those concerns. Some people argue that even with all these efforts being made, Bitcoin's energy use is still just too high
Yeah.
compared to traditional financial systems.
Right.
And there are valid questions about whether the benefits outweigh the environmental costs.
Yeah, it definitely feels like an ongoing conversation.
It is. It's an evolving landscape.
And there's no easy answer.
No, not at all.
Okay.
But I think the key takeaway here is that the Bitcoin community is becoming increasingly aware of its impact.
Yeah.
We're seeing real progress being made.
Okay.
And with that continued focus on renewable energy, energy efficiency, and all these innovative solutions,
Yeah.
the future of Bitcoin mining, it has the potential to be a lot greener than it is today.
So we've explored the energy-intensive nature of Bitcoin mining, the environmental concerns, and the innovative ways miners are working to reduce their impact. We've also talked about carbon offsetting and the role of government regulations.
That's a lot to digest.
It really is.
Yeah.
What do you think about all this? Do you believe Bitcoin can truly become sustainable in the long run?
It's a big question, and there are definitely strong arguments on both sides.
Let us know your thoughts in the comments.
We'd love to hear your perspective.
And if you want to dive deeper into more fascinating topics like this one, make sure to subscribe to our channel.
We've got a lot more deep dives coming your way.
Please subscribe, like, and comment for more videos and the topic for next podcast.